Welcome to the Cinema Spotlight, hosted by James Sena. All things entertainment. Grab your popcorn and enjoy the show. Hey everybody, and welcome to the Cinema Spotlight. This is the show where we dissect all things movies, TV, and everything in between. I am your host and self-proclaimed media expert, James Sena. Oscar nominations are officially out, so this episode begins the countdown to the end of the Cinema Spotlight's Season 1. As tradition, we'll insert another entry into our 2023 Oscar Watch. Following that will be a fun little segment I'm calling Genres in General. And, as I mentioned just a moment ago, the Oscar nominations are out, so we're going to take a closer look at those during the final segment, Snubs and Dubs. With that, this episode of the Cinema Spotlight is about to begin. And of course, here's an official spoiler warning for any and all content discussed here today. If you wish to skip around and avoid spoilers, you can find timestamps for the segments of the episode in the description, both on YouTube, and I'm going to try to make it work on Spotify as well. I had a little bit of difficulty with that last episode, but I'm going to try to figure it out. Enough said, let's shine a spotlight on the Fabelmans.
Oscar Watch. Oscar Watch.
Going into the Fabelmans, I didn't do a lot of research, but I had been hearing that it was a solid Spielberg film, which got me excited, and I knew it was about a kid who loves making movies. Although I will say, to be honest, it didn't really dawn on me that this movie was autobiographical. It is a movie directed by Steven Spielberg about himself as a kid growing into his love for filmmaking. That's what this movie is essentially about. And but that's all I knew really going in. Co-written by Tony Kushner, who was the playwright for Angels in America, which was a very influential piece in American theater. Gabriel LaBelle plays Sammy Fabelman. Michelle Williams plays Mitzi Fabelman. Paul Dano plays Bert Fabelman. Seth Rogen as Benny Lowry. And Judd Hirsch as Uncle Boris. Let's just jump right in, right? Here's a light spoiler warning, or light spoiler summary for the movie. And there's a lot to talk about here. So, the film opens. We see the Fabelmans going to see a film. Sammy, although terrified of what he saw, because the movie contained the scene of a train crash, and I believe they had to leave the theater for that, he was guided by his parents to understand that what he saw was quote-unquote movie magic. After asking for his first camera for Hanukkah, it began his obsession with making movies, which he would go on to do with his friends and family. He films basically everything, and this may seem like a throwaway description, but it's important, and the reason being, at a certain point, it becomes obvious to not only the audience, but the characters themselves, that there's something going on between Mitzi, Sammy's mom, and Benny, who is his dad's best friend. Some tea. And we're to assume that this is an affair, but we don't really know what the extent of it is until they go on a camping trip, and like I mentioned, Sammy does a lot of just filming just a bit of everything, and this is a slow-burning conflict in the background of the film, but it dictates how the rest of the characters behave for the remainder of the story. Now, there's a scene where Uncle Boris comes to visit following the death of his and Mitzi's mother, and he has a very eye-opening conversation with Sammy about his passion for art and his love for his family, basically preparing him for the reality that he will have to compromise when it comes to both of these things. And he himself is a filmmaker and works in that industry, so that's where he's speaking from a place of experience, which is why there's a whole conversation why Uncle Boris is sort of estranged from the family, and this is why. It's because he chose his work over his family. Now, the family moves to Saratoga for Bert's new job, and they leave Benny behind for obvious reasons. But, I mean, side note, I never fully understood what his job was. I don't know if they made it specifically clear. My guess is that it definitely involves something with computers or technology. My guess is Motorola. I feel like I remember hearing the brand Motorola name dropped during the movie. So that could have something to do with it. Maybe some smartphones or something like that. But anyways, the family is miserable in Saratoga, and even worse, Sammy is abused and bullied by students at his new school for being Jewish. Very anti-Semitic students at that school, and these scenes were very difficult to watch. But I will say that they did effectively help push along Sammy's character arc that we see throughout this movie as well. There's a whole section about their ditch day, and this sort of really feeds into his growth as a character. Sammy, I'm talking about. The ditch day at the school, Sammy is sort of volunteered by his girlfriend at the time to film it and edit it and turn it into something. After the viewing of said film, I believe it was at a prom or some sort of school dance that they showed it, Logan, the head honcho bully, confronts Sammy about why Sammy portrayed him positively in the film despite being so nasty to him, which was honestly just, there's so much to unpack about that scene, but it was just so beautifully acted. And I'm definitely skipping a lot because, I mean, I could talk about this movie all day, as I can most movies, but the film ends with Sammy attending a meeting for a job on Hogan's Heroes. He's messaged by, I believe it was CBS. And he has a conversation with John Ford, the director, although in the movie it's actually funny. John Ford, who is a director, is being portrayed by David Lynch, who is actually a director for the film, which I thought was kind of funny because David Lynch is known for movies such as Mulholland Drive and Eraserhead and stuff like that. Neither of which I've actually seen, but they're high on my to-watch list. That's my summary of the movie. My rating of the movie straight up is just an 8 out of 10. No fancy decimals or anything. It's an 8 out of 10. It is the baseline for a great movie. And here's some talking points that I want to mention. And I'm going to start with this. The conclusion of the film, talking about placement of the horizon. And I might be butchering this quote, but there's a whole conversation between Sammy and John Ford talking about how John Ford is just like, look at these paintings. And he's like, what can you tell me about the horizon? He goes, when a horizon is at the top of the picture, it's interesting. When the horizon's at the bottom of the picture, it's interesting. When it's in the middle, it's boring. And it's so just masterfully done by Spielberg to end the movie and have Sammy kind of walk toward the horizon. And as he's walking into the horizon, it's shown in the middle of the frame, and the director, or whoever's holding the camera, does a jerking motion and shifts the camera to have the horizon, I believe it was at the bottom of the frame, to show that it's more interesting. Because, I mean, and this reminds us, like, hey, this movie is about Spielberg, but remember, this happened. So he learned that from this. So he's like, let me show you what I learned. And I thought it was such a beautiful little touch, and honestly, one of the most well done final shots of a movie that I've seen in recent memory, for sure. I want to just shout out another scene here. Praise to Jesus before kissing is sort of like what I've labeled this scene as. And it was a funny scene. It was a scene between, I forget his girlfriend's character, like that character's name. I don't know if she's that important to the overall plot, but she shows an interest in Sammy, and they go to her room, and she finds out that he's Jewish, and she's like very into Jesus. So she's like, it's okay, like we can kiss, but like we just have to like pray. And they're just like, they get on their knees, and she's just like showing him like, you have to pray. And it's just, there's something about it where it's intentionally done, I think, to be comedic. I think that there's aspects about this that maybe wouldn't be funny to some people, and that's totally fine. But I think it was done with the intention of being comedic, with just how, like, they're about to start, I guess, kissing, or, you know, doing whatever, and they look up, and the crucifix of like Jesus is kind of looking down on them, and I swear, like, he just kind of has like the Dwayne Johnson eyebrow raise looking down at Sammy, which I think was funny. Another note that I want to bring in here, Seth Rogen, I believe, was actually quite good in this movie, weirdly. I feel like I tend to give him a lot of shit, but for a more dramatic role, which this was, I think he pulled it off well. He was supposed to be a likable, friendly person who just sort of gets wrapped into this, and he doesn't really play the character like a scumbag, and he totally could, but he wasn't. He definitely cares about the family. He cares about Bert. He cares about Mitzi. He cares about the kids. He cares about everyone. It's just an unfortunate sort of situation that's going on. And that whole scene where he gives Sammy the camera is actually a very well done scene. I really enjoyed that scene. And this movie had a lot to say about filmmaking. It was genuinely fascinating to watch because, in a way, we're also getting Spielberg's take on how to grow as a filmmaker. So that was interesting, especially for me, someone who studied film in college, and probably for a lot of people just like me who are fans of the art. And let's just be honest here, because I mean, I'm talking about a lot of great things. There is one aspect of the movie that I want to just highlight, or not highlight, but just sort of, it's a negative that I have. It is one nitpick. There was a chunk of runtime that lent itself to watching the movies that Sammy had made, which like, I understand it in a couple scenarios. Like the Senior Ditch Day film, I feel like was important to show some of it because of the conversation that Logan has with him. But in a weird way, like, and this happens a few times, we see him filming the scene, and then we later see basically the exact same scene just done in the film, and it doesn't really look that much different. So there's a part of me that's sort of like, this feels like when you're watching anime and the anime reuses old scenes. Like, that's sort of what it feels like. And it feels like there's one, I forget exactly what the scenario was. There was a whole, I think it was maybe the war film bit that they did. I think I fell asleep for like 10 to 15 minutes during that part, because that whole section was just them watching Sammy's film, and I was like, oh my god, this is dragging. I just feel like they could have trimmed the whole thing by 10, like they could have trimmed a good chunk of the film by not having, like, you don't need to show those. I feel like you don't need to show all of it. Maybe I'm wrong. Feel free to disagree in the comments, but I don't know. That's my take. But yeah, anyways, that's all, like, the real talking points I want to bring up. Now that we know the Oscar nominations for this section of the Oscar Watch, we're going to run through the Fabelmans nominations, and I'm going to give my thoughts on its likelihood of winning that category. So it was, I think it was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I think I said 8 at the beginning. 7 categories it was nominated for, which is it's no small feat. Which ones can the Fabelmans win at the Oscars? Now, it was nominated for, should I just list them all off? Yeah, screw it. We'll do it that way. Best Picture, Best Director, Best Lead Actress for Michelle Williams, Best Supporting Actor, Judd Hirsch, Best Original Screenplay, Best Production Design, and Best Original Score. Now, what's it going to win? Is it going to win anything? Possibly. So, let's talk about it. Some of these are a long shot. The one I definitely think, unfortunately, has no chance is Judd Hirsch for Best Supporting Actor. I feel very strongly that that's going to Ke Huy Quan. I feel like Judd Hirsch is likely to lose that. It's going to Quan, 100%. And if it doesn't, it's not going to Hirsch. I'll tell you that right now. And another one, I feel like Michelle Williams was fantastic in this movie, but again, I feel like Cate Blanchett is picking up so much steam for Tar. I just don't see Michelle Williams winning that. And production design feels unlikely as well. Just based on its competition, it'll likely go to a film like All Quiet on the Western Front or something like that. Or Everything Everywhere All at Once will probably sweep the Oscars. So that'll probably go to that as well. Again, Best Picture, Best Original Screenplay is very tough, because in both, the Fabelmans, it's against Banshees and Everything Everywhere. So that's going to be a stretch. However, the Fabelmans did win a Best Picture at the Golden Globes. So it has some grounds to walk, and this could win that. However, I believe when it was nominated for that Golden Globes, it wasn't up against Banshees or Everything Everywhere. I think it was put up against everything else in the dramas category, whereas the other two were more for comedy, which, I mean, it doesn't give me high hopes for this movie winning either of those. However, I feel like it's not impossible that for these next two, and that is, first of which is Best Original Score, although I will say I'm pulling for Babylon on that one, and the only reason why this film is going to be a frontrunner for that, potentially, is just because of the fact that John Williams did the score, and everyone knows John Williams is amazing. He did the Jurassic Park theme and Indiana Jones theme, I'm pretty sure. For everyone who is curious on who John Williams is, you should probably... He's one of the music guys that you should know. And Best Director. This one, I genuinely think Spielberg has a solid chance. I don't actually know offhand if he's won that yet. He may have. He may have won it at the Golden Globes. I don't remember. But the Daniels for Everything Everywhere is definitely up there, and Martin McDonagh for Banshees is definitely going to be up there as well. James Cameron could be looked at. I believe he was nominated. But I do think that Spielberg, I don't know why I said it like that. Spielberg, I think he has a chance at Best Director. Otherwise, just summing it all up, 7 nominations, but it's a tough competition this year. It's really, really tough. If The Fabelmans wins anything, it's going to be Best Director, in my personal opinion. If it snags a win anywhere else, I think it should be very grateful. Not saying it's bad, but I think this movie was very enjoyable. If you haven't seen it, check it out. I think it's definitely worth watching. And it's Spielberg's last film, as far as I'm aware. So if you care about that, then that's definitely something worth checking out. Now, that's where I'm going to call it for this segment. But if you want to hear more about my thoughts on The Fabelmans and its Oscar chances, as well as other films that came out this past year's Oscar chances, stick around until the end of the show, because we're going to be covering that. Otherwise, we'll be right back. What movies would you like to see me talk about on the Oscar Watch? If you're listening on Spotify, head over to YouTube and let me know in the comments below, and I will cue that movie up for a future episode. Now, let's get back to the show. And welcome back. Alright, so this next segment that we're going to have here is called Genres in General. And I think there's plenty of conversation to be had when it comes to breaking down the logistics of a movie genre. There are tropes, there are common themes, recurring characters, and overall just specific aspects about each genre that allow it to be both simultaneously unique and also, unique but also just similar enough to the other movies within the genre so that it can be included within that genre, if that makes sense. So today, I want to break down musicals, because as I was watching a movie recently, and we'll dive into that in just a little bit, I noticed some specific details, and I just had some thoughts that I wanted to explain, or not explain, but just kind of dive into here, and I thought it would be an interesting conversation, because the musical genre is not one that I am super duper invested in. And I think that's just because the type of stories that I normally go for are those heavier dramas, the mind benders. I'm super into, I love David Fincher movies, so that if you're a fan of David Fincher, then you know exactly why maybe I wouldn't be drawn to musical movies. But just so that we get a basis of what we're working with here, I have in my notes here just a very scratching the surface definition of a musical and what that means. So here's what Google had to say. A musical film is a film genre in which songs by the characters are interwoven into the narrative, sometimes accompanied by dancing. The songs usually advance the plot or develop the film's characters, but in some cases they serve as merely breaks in the storyline, often as elaborate quote-unquote production numbers. And then I found this other quote as well. What good movie musicals have in common is a trust in their audience to suspend disbelief and a strong commitment to their themes and stylization. So that's kind of a lot of word vomit there, but let's break that down, because I think there's a lot of really key elements there that can really make or break certain movies for people. So, let's start off with the first sentence that they said. Songs by the characters interwoven into the narrative. I think when we all think of musicals, that makes a lot of sense. The characters are singing, but I think that there's also an element here where it's like, just to think about it a little bit deeper, if we try here, the characters are the ones singing. So a musical isn't just a movie happening and then blasting just music over the context of the entire movie. That's not a musical. That's just really bad sound design. It's just not a good made movie or a well made movie. The characters are the ones singing, and I mean, again, that in and of itself is its own choice, and it's what makes it a musical. But I think the next part, oh, and the dancing too, but I think that just kind of goes hand in hand with it. I actually like this next part a lot, and I really want to break this down, and I have some examples as well. The songs usually advance the plot or develop the film's characters. And then, we'll touch on that first. Advance the plot or develop the film's characters. This uses, and I feel like this is a stylistic choice, to have the characters sing as a way to maybe express how they're feeling. And I one of the best examples that I can think of off the top of my head is from Tick Tick Boom, which is probably one of the musicals that I've seen most recently, starring Andrew Garfield. If you haven't seen it, by the way, I think it's on Netflix still. It's very good, actually. There's a scene where I think the scene itself is called Therapy? Yeah, it's called Therapy. And it's a song between him and his girlfriend in the movie. And they're talking about, I don't know the words offhand because I'm just sort of coming up with this on the spot, but they're talking about the fact that, like, when you're in a relationship and you're saying, like, I feel bad about you feeling bad about me feeling bad, and it kind of goes back and forth. And it's a fun little song, and there's some musical elements, and obviously because it's a song, but what I like about that is it allows the opportunity, which otherwise we probably wouldn't get from certain characters, an insight into how they're thinking. Because normally how we would do this in theater, just regular theater, is you would have a character on stage alone and they would say all the stuff out loud. But when you're looking at a film, realistically, when does that happen in a film? When do you see a film happen? There's one character by himself and he's going, I've been really depressed recently. Like no, what? No, it's just not going to happen. You're not going to see that. You're going to see that in something like theater. So I think musical theater is where this originates. And unfortunately, Google can't confirm that for me right this second. But the theater elements of musical is, I think, what makes it so unique is this fact that it allows the characters to really divulge not just how they're thinking, but they're feeling, and maybe they're able to express it in a way you can't express that through other means in a regular film, because you're so worried about the plot of everything happening. There's so many moving pieces, whereas the musical really takes time to slow things down, focus on the characters individually and how they're thinking and feeling, which I think is a very stylistic and interesting choice, which I didn't value before, and I really didn't appreciate musicals in that sort of lens. So I hope if you're hearing this and maybe you're thinking too, like, hey, you know what? I never thought about musicals in that way. So it's making me want to go and check out La La Land because I haven't seen that one, and I know it there was a whole thing at the Oscars. That's its own thing, but. Then it adds this other part here. In some cases, they serve merely as breaks in the storyline, often as elaborate production numbers. Now, the first thing that comes to mind when I read that is High School Musical. And, realistically speaking here, Troy Bolton running around in a golf course or whatever saying, bet on it, bet on it, bet on it, bet on it. Or, however the song goes. I'm not going to pretend like I don't know the lyrics to that. I mean, come on. It's Bet on it. It's a great High School Musical song. Comment down below your favorite High School Musical song. Anyways, let's pretend like that. I guess it does show his inner thoughts. So maybe that's not the best example. That might not be the best example. Maybe, what would be a better example? get your head in the game, or that one. Is that really advancing the plot? No. I mean, it's a song about the fact that he's got to get his head in the game, which is like, in any other movie you could just say that to Troy and maybe he'd get it through his thick skull. So maybe, I mean, a song there is a choice, but it really, I think that song specifically, yeah, no, Bet on It definitely shows his inner thoughts. So maybe that wasn't a good example, but yeah, get your head in the game. I mean, it's definitely a break in the storyline. It definitely halts the plot of the movie for some fun sing-along little action there. Now, this last part here, which I think is super interesting. What good, this is the full sentence here, what good movie musicals have in common is a trust in their audience. Okay, a trust in their audience to suspend disbelief in a strong commitment to their themes and stylization. This is key. This is so key to understanding musicals and how they work, because and I think this is what makes or break the genre for some people. When you watch a musical, you have to be willing to do exactly as it says. You have to be willing to suspend disbelief. The Sound of Music comes up in my head. And do you really think that a bunch of people are just going to be running around singing, "Doe, a deer, a female deer, ray, a drop and gold of sun"? You really think that people are just going to be running around in like Central Park just singing whatever nonsense? No, it's not realistic at all, not in the slightest. But it's still a banger of a song, isn't it? So, but the filmmaker trusts its audience to say, okay, we understand that that's not realistic. We get it. We totally get it. Or there's a song in Tick Tick Boom even. It's definitely much more of a serious project, serious film. But there's a whole scene where he's just playing a piano in the middle of a field while it's raining. Let's be honest. Is that realistic for someone to do? I mean, very, very, very unlikely. Very unlikely. But we understand the point of what this choice is representing. This character has now an opportunity to share what he's thinking and feeling with the audience. With the Do Re Mi example, this is symbolic of the kids understanding and learning the beauty and value of music. Because before, it's been a while since I've seen that movie, but the whole point of Julie Andrews' character, I'm blanking on her name for some reason. Julie Andrews' character is she's showing the kids that there's more to life than just absolute seriousness all the time, and being able to use music as an escape from all the serious and dark aspects of life, which the movie absolutely does a good job of hitting on as well. So we as the audience are responsible for saying, you know what, I get it. This isn't realistic, but this is a stylized choice, and we are committing ourselves to the viewing experience and allowing the director to show us, okay, this is what I'm trying to say, but I'm expressing it in this way. And I think that there's a lot of, it's very fascinating to me, because it's so interesting that out of every other genre that exists, I mean, most of the time, the choices and decisions stylistically, there's not a lot of wiggle room in some of these other genres, but in musicals allow itself to give itself these other options of, we are going to pause the story and we're going to display this thought in the form of a song and music. So, that being said, it's one thing to not enjoy musicals, but what causes a musical to be bad versus not to your personal taste? And furthermore, I guess a question that I'm going to ask here with our remaining time this segment, how could the genre be revolutionized? Because we are constantly looking to evolve each genre. We're constantly, not even just each genre, just film in its entirety. We're always looking for ways to modernize it, to revolutionize it, to make it better and create even more choices. An example in the horror genre would be Scream. I just watched a video about Scream, and I did a project about it in college. Scream is so interesting because it really plays with the concept of the tropes of the movie, and it's the first movie that really speaks on itself and clowns on itself in a satirical way, but is also just as scary as every other horror movie. So what can the musical genre do in order to be revolutionized? And I think I had a couple ideas here. I actually don't have anything written down, so this is me sort of riffing a little bit. I love the idea of, and this is just one example. So Hamilton, for example, used and incorporated a lot of rap, which was something that wasn't seen before. A lot of musicals are very, musical films and musical theater all have a very similar way of doing the music. So rap was something new, and I think that there's ways to play with this and different, not just do different types of music, but I think the way in which the musicals incorporate the songs, and I think having just not the best singers do the music, I think is also a fun way to do it. Because if you watch a movie like Mulan, I'll Make a Man Out of You is one of the most famous songs from that movie, if not the most famous song. I think it's debatable, but it's definitely up there. There's a whole sequence where the warriors are, I'm never gonna catch my breath, say goodbye to those who knew me. Like, those aren't, they're not songs. And a really, really good example of this is in The Greatest Showman, where they're taking shots at the bar, and they're really, for the the other side, I don't want to just keep singing different things, but there's a lot of interesting concepts used for that song specifically, and that movie did a very good job of using the songs in completely different ways from each other, advancing the plot. And honestly, I think that's what makes or break a musical movie. What causes it to be bad versus not to your personal taste? I think a good musical, or one that could be seen as good, is one that takes these elements, does them well, does them in their own way, but doesn't take away from the viewing experience. If you take the music away from this movie, is the movie severely lessened by doing so? I think that's the number one question to ask when you're watching a musical. If you're watching a musical and you find yourself saying, okay, well, a lot of these songs have nothing to do with the plot, it just feels like they're trying to fill in the runtime. They're filling in the runtime, and a lot of these songs, they're not even good. Really good music is one way to make it good, but you can have a movie like A Greatest Showman didn't land for everyone because the plot ran a little bit thin. I think what makes a musical successful is when it's able to have this good music, but that music adds and contributes to the value of the overall story. That's my personal take on it. And I would love to hear everyone else's take on this in the comments below. I've been curious to jump into this genre. I watched Tick, Tick, Boom, and I really enjoyed it. So maybe I'll have to dabble a little bit. I don't know if there were any musicals that came out this year. I'm not watching Cats, so you can F off if you're suggesting that. I'm not doing it. No way I'm putting myself through that. But if you are a fan of musical this genre of film, let me know in the comments and include recommendations. You'll have a moment to do that right now, actually, as we take a quick break. If you are enjoying the show so far, remember to check out the Cinema Spotlight Spotify playlist and subscribe to keep up with future episodes. Now, let's get back to the show. The Oscar nominations have finally been announced, as now begins voting for the eventual winners come the Academy Awards ceremony in March. Last episode, I made my nomination predictions based on the Golden Globes and the Critics' Choice Award winners and nominees from there. But today, I'm going to go through and talk briefly about each category in the Oscars. I believe there's, this could be wrong actually, but I believe there's 18 categories. There may be way more than that. But I'm going to go through and just talk about the snubs and dubs from each category. So we have a lot to get through. So that's the intro. We're going to just transition right over to the nomination list. And I'm just going to go through, I'm going to go from the bottom instead of starting with like Best Picture and all that and then end up with the categories that no one cares about, or sorry, that people care less about. We're going to start with Best Sound. So the nominees for Best Sound were All Quiet on the Western Front, Avatar, The Batman, Elvis, and Top Gun Maverick. So I actually haven't seen any of these, so it's hard to judge. However, based on what I know about the iteration of All Quiet on the Western Front that I've seen, I saw the older one. I have to check out the newer one, I think, just because it got so many nominations, as you'll see. But that, I feel like, makes sense as a nomination. Avatar also, I feel like, is one where, I mean, hey, I think that Avatar, like the first Avatar, is gonna. The sound was great on that too. Elvis, Top Gun Maverick, Batman. I mean, I haven't seen any of those. If I had to put my money on it right now, I'd give it to All Quiet or Avatar, one of those two. But it could be any of them for all I know, really. Next category is Best Original Score, and I'm so happy to tell everyone that Babylon is nominated. That was one I predicted, and I got it right. I said, you know what? Babylon could take this home, and sure enough, it got nominated. And I'm very happy about that, because not only did I make that prediction correct, but I actually think it's my favorite to win personally. And there's more information here on this category too. The Fabelmans, Everything Everywhere, Banshees, and All Quiet on the Western Front. Realistically, those are probably the top 4 choices for Best Picture, by the way. They are the other 4 nominees, and I have a feeling here that they were put in as filler. I think that could also just be me running my mouth. The Fabelmans was, honestly, it was a good score. Don't get me wrong. It's John Williams' score. Everything Everywhere probably has a good score. That is going to be one of the next 2 movies that I check out from this year. Banshees had, honestly, a lack of a score. I loved Banshees, but don't get me wrong. I think the score of the movie was nothing special. So, and then All Quiet did get a nominee for Best Sound, so that would probably be good competition there. But what won I believe Babylon won the Golden Globe, and the Critics' Choice Award went to Tar. Tar wasn't even nominated, which is a huge revelation for this. I'm Team Babylon. Let's go, Team Babylon. Okay. As we're moving, Best Hair and Makeup, All Quiet on the Western Front, another nomination for that. The Batman, Black Panther, Elvis, and The Whale. If the fat suit for Brendan Fraser counts as hair and makeup, which I think we'll see. I don't know if that goes as costume or hair and makeup. If it counts as hair and makeup, that's probably what the nomination is for, and I would personally like to see it go to The Whale for that, because it looks great. It looked really good, and just from what I've been able to see. Normally, something like this might go to Black Panther, though. Or, I mean, Elvis, I could see it being, like, flashy. Batman. I don't understand why All Quiet got a nomination for this, to be honest. Maybe because, like, the grime and like the blood, does that count as like hair, like makeup? I guess it does. That's a tight category. My favorite to win would be, or I guess what I'm rooting for would be The Whale, but I don't know if it's the favorite to win. Maybe I'd give the favorite to win it to Elvis, but if any of these won, I think it'd be a fair win. The Batman barely got nominated for certain things, so I would love to see the Batman also take its rightful Oscar victories here. Best live action short. I haven't seen any of these. I'll list them. An Irish Goodbye, Ivaloo, Le Poupée, which actually my pronunciation was just utter dog water. That's how you say it in French. It's French. It's Le Poupée, because the ILLE is like the E. You don't say ill. It's not Le Poupille, or is it? No. It's not. Anyways, the other 2 are Night Ride and The Red Suitcase. We're gonna root for the Poopy, so we're gonna move on. But that's my inner 5-year-old is just like, make the Poopy win. Anyways. I digress. I hate myself. Best Costume Design. So this is good. The nominations for this are Babylon, Black Panther, Elvis, Everything Everywhere, and Mrs. Harris Goes to Paris. I would probably give this to Black Panther or Elvis. Same thing with hair and makeup. It's probably a similar situation. I don't imagine... I'm actually happy that Babylon got the nomination here, but I don't think it's going to win. I would probably give it to Black Panther or Elvis. Those would be my top 2 favorites. But we'll see, because Everything Everywhere... We're about to get a huge slush of... Okay, when has that ever been said? Anyways... Everything Everywhere is about to just completely take over in these next few categories. But anyways, we're moving on. Animated short films. The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse. The Flying Sailor. Ice Merchants. My Year of Dicks. An ostrich told me the world is fake, and I think I believe it. Um, I remember. So I watched this live, and if you watched it live too, you'll know that the presenters, as they were presenting My Year of Dicks, paused after they said it, and they had to make sure that they didn't laugh, which made the audience laugh because it's very funny. Uh, it's just, anyways. Yeah, I'm rooting for the Dicks. All right. So best animated feature film: Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio, Marcel the Shell with Shoes On, Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, The Sea Beast, and Turning Red. Interesting. I believe Lightyear came out last year, the Buzz Lightyear one. That did not get a nomination here. Wendell and Wild was definitely snubbed. I've realized that I haven't been saying snubs or dubs throughout these, but this is the first one where I feel like Wendell and Wild maybe could have deserved that. And I feel like Lightyear, although I didn't see it, it just goes to show that it wasn't as loved as people thought it was. I know that there was a lot of happy viewers when The Sea Beast was nominated, as well as Puss in Boots, because Puss in Boots just blew up on TikTok when it was not, or not when it was nominated, but when it came out, everyone was ranting and raving about it. Interesting that we don't see any. I'll just describe it as anime, because Jujutsu Kaisen 0 is not on here, and I think it could have been. Although that's just me, like the fanboy in me. But I mean, I'm sure that there must have been some other types of movies. Wasn't there other movies like that could have gotten over maybe CB? Like no foreign best animated features, which is interesting to me. But Pinocchio's winning this. It's not even close. Everyone has been saying Pinocchio's going to win. It's completely swept every other award show. It's going to win. Best visual effects: All Quiet on the Western Front, Avatar, The Batman, Black Panther: Wakanda Forever, and Top Gun: Maverick. I would probably go with... I don't know. I haven't seen any of these, so it's hard for me to judge. But, I mean, just based on what I think the Academy might do, is I could see a Top Gun: Maverick win here. I could see an Avatar win. I don't think it's going to The Batman, although that could be cool. And I don't know if it would go to Black Panther, but Black Panther also... I think it's won it actually before. Or Marvel movies usually tend to have a good stake in this category. So we'll see. We'll see. Best production design: All Quiet on the Western Front, Avatar: The Way of Water, Babylon, Elvis, and The Fabelmans. If I had to guess, this is going to be tough. All Quiet feels like it's got a good chance here at this one. Same thing with Avatar. Babylon, I'd give it to. I genuinely think that best production design, it has a chance to win that one. Fabelmans, maybe, but I don't think the production design was like that crazy when I saw it. Anyways, best original song: Applause from Tell It Like a Woman, Hold My Hand from Top Gun: Maverick, Lift Me Up from Black Panther: Wakanda Forever, Natu Natu from RRR, and This Is a Life from Everything Everywhere. It's going to Natu Natu. It's got to. It's got to go to Natu Natu. And that's just because it's won basically every single other award ceremony. But anyways, best international feature film. We keep rolling here. All Quiet on the Western Front, that's going to win. It's going to win. But Argentina 1985, close. EO, Quiet Girl. Important to note, no Decision to Leave here. That was a big snub in a lot of people's eyes, and I tend to agree. I think that Decision to Leave, I've heard so many good things about it. I can only imagine that would be a huge snub. Best film editing. Here is, I'm very, unfortunately, The Menu did not claim a nomination. This was one of the ones where I was like, oh, The Menu could get something here, and it didn't. The Banshees of Inisherin, Elvis, Everything Everywhere, Tar, and Top Gun: Maverick. I have to imagine that it would go to Top Gun, or probably Everything Everywhere. Those are definitely the front runners. But we'll have to see. Definitely, yeah. Best film editing, no Menu. Realizing no Fabelmans, which is interesting, especially because I think that, or maybe that's cinematography. Well, the whole like horizon shot at the end. I don't know if that's editing. That might be a director thing. Who knows? Okay. Best documentary short film. I haven't actually seen any of these, but I will present them. The Elephant Whisperers, Howlett, How Do You Measure a Year, The Martha Mitchell Effect, and Stranger at the Gate. I have no way to know what's going to win this, but I do love elephants, so I'm going to go with that one. Best documentary feature film. All That Breathes, All the Beauty and the Bloodshed, Fire of Love, A House Made of Splinters, and Naval Knee. House Made of Splinters is just such an awesome title for just anything, so I'm going to root for that just because it actually makes me want to check it out, to be honest with you. Here we go, Best Cinematography. Featuring a little voice crack there. All Quiet on the Western Front, Bardo, False Chronicle of a Handful of Truths, Elvis, Empire of Light, and Tar. Interestingly, Bardo was one of those movies where I think before any of the award seasons came, a lot of people, and before it came out in theaters, everyone was like, wow, this is going to be a movie to check out. This is going to be one where it's going to win some stuff. It's going to win. And it was like, it came out and it was pretty garbage. No one really spoke about it at all. So, and you'll get one of those or a few of those every single year. Triangle of Sadness is another one, which you'll see got some nominations, but I think people thought it was going to be way better than it ended up being. But Best Cinematography, I haven't seen any of these either. Damn. All Quiet on the Western Front. Like I said, I still got more work to do, but I did see The Fabelmans, so we're working our way through. Best Original Screenplay. This one's one of the bigger categories here. Banshees of Inisherin, Everything Everywhere All at Once, The Fabelmans, Tar, and Triangle of Sadness. This is pretty straightforward. It's going to go between Banshees, Everything Everywhere, and Fabelmans. I don't think it's going to Tar. I don't think it's going to Triangle of Sadness. I think it's more likely this is just a secondary Best Picture, because I don't know if it'll get... See, because it's the same three frontrunners. It's The Fabelmans, Everything Everywhere, and Banshees. They're the frontrunners of freaking everything. I'm going to root for Banshees. I haven't seen Everything Everywhere, but maybe once I see that, I'll be like, damn, Banshees ain't winning shit. But we'll see. Adapted Screenplay. Best Adapted Screenplay. All Quiet on the Western Front. Glass Onion, A Knives Out Mystery. Living. Top Gun Maverick, and Woman Talking. I have to imagine that this is probably going to go to Women Talking. Or All Quiet on the Western Front. One of those two. I don't know how Glass Onion got a nomination here. I have no damn clue. Best Adapted Screenplay. I'm not sure what qualifies it for that versus Best Original Screenplay. But I guess it's like... All Quiet makes sense because it's a movie that has already come out. Maybe Glass Onion because it's already... like a Knives Out thing has already come up. Like it has something to base off of. Same thing with Top Gun. This is the second in that film. And Women Talking was like maybe something based on something else. I guess that makes sense. I guess from that standpoint, if it's best adapted, I have to imagine that Top Gun Maverick, actually, now that I think about it, has a very good chance there. Because people were saying that like it's leagues better than the first one. So if you're going off of like what's the best thing that was adapted, that would be what I would go for. Now we have Best Supporting Actress. Angela Bassett, Hong Chow, Kerry Condon, Jamie Lee Curtis, Stephanie Hsu. I didn't list any of the movies with it. But, that being said, we already know that Angela Bassett has absolutely been sweeping this category. So, it'll probably go to Angela Bassett for Black Panther. I think that's what it would go to. Kerry Condon was great in Banshees. I don't know if she would win this though. Hong Chow and The Whale, I've heard good things, but again, The Whale is one that I need to check out specifically for Brendan Fraser because I think he's a front runner there. But interestingly, 2 nominations there for Everything Everywhere. So what are some snubs there? I mean, the list goes on really. There's a lot of supporting. Like I mean, I think a big snub here was, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm blanking on her name. Keke Palmer. There we go. Oh my god, I can't believe I almost forgot her name. But yeah, Keke Palmer I would say is a snub there. She was pretty great, but I did say that I don't think Nope is going to get nominations. I did say that. So spoilers, it didn't. So Best Supporting Actor, we have Brendan Gleeson for Banshees, Brian Tyree Henry for Causeway, which I think some people were pleasantly surprised by that. Judd Hirsch for The Fabelmans, Barry Keoghan in Banshees, and then Ke Huy Quan in Everything Everywhere, which we all know he's the front runner for that for sure. However, just not necessarily a snub, but just confusing. Why did Paul Dano not get a nomination, but Judd Hirsch did for Fabelmans? Is anyone else that's really closely following this? Can you let me know? Judd Hirsch was great, but Paul Dano was also fantastic for Fabelmans. So I don't understand why Judd Hirsch, who had a much, much, much smaller role, got the nomination over him. That to me was like, that's probably one of the biggest snubs this year, in my opinion. But anyways, Best Lead Actress. Here we go. Some of the, probably the top 3 categories here that everyone cares about. Sorry, top 4. Best Lead Actress. Cate Blanchett for Tar. That was not a surprise. Michelle Williams for Fabelmans. Not necessarily a surprise. Michelle Yeoh for Everything Everywhere. Ana de Armas for Blonde. And Andrea Riseborough for To Leslie. So that one was one that everyone was shocked. Especially because Margot Robbie did not get a nomination for Babylon, which I thought she might, at the very least, get the nomination. She didn't get the nomination. Ana de Armas, I have to see Blonde. A lot of people are saying that they didn't like Blonde, so I'm surprised that they gave her a nom, but that doesn't really comment on her acting ability in that. So anyway, who knows? Andrea Riseborough, though, was a pleasant surprise. For a lot of people were happy that she got the nom, because at the very, very least, she deserved a nomination for her role. But yeah, this is going to Cate Blanchett, and I would say Michelle Williams and Michelle Yeoh, they're probably right there in terms of, like, they definitely are up there. But everything points to Cate Blanchett just winning this, so we'll see. Best Lead Actor, the nominations. To no one's surprise, Austin Butler for Elvis, Colin Farrell for Banshees, Brendan Fraser for The Whale. I've been saying this since November. These are going to be the 3 frontrunners. I've known it for the whole time. Now, the other 2 nominations are slightly more surprising, but also slightly more irrelevant because they're not going to win. But Paul Mescal for Aftersun and Bill Nye for Living. After last week's episode, I did check the pronunciation, and it really is just Bill Nye. So, there you go. Who do I think is going to win? Oh man, I have no idea. I imagine Austin Butler, but it really could go to Colin Farrell or Brendan Fraser, and I also wouldn't be surprised. That's going to be it's a very, very tight three-way race here. That's going to be all gloves off. I'm curious to see how that ends up. Best Director, Martin McDonagh for Banshees, The Daniels, Daniel Kwan and Daniel Scheinert for Everything Everywhere, Steven Spielberg for The Fabelmans, Todd Field for Tar, and Ruben Östlund for Triangle of Sadness. Ruben Östlund, I've done some research, is definitely highly acclaimed for what he was able to do. However, I do think that it's going to one of those top 3, which I've been saying the whole time. Martin McDonagh for Banshees, from the very start, I knew he was going to get a nomination. Steven Spielberg, I absolutely understand now why he would get the nomination, and I actually think he's probably at the top right now in terms of like likely to win it, but I don't know for sure because you have the Daniels, who are very, very deserving for Everything Everywhere, and then we have the Best Picture category. This is the last one. Thank you for sticking with me this whole time and waiting for Best Picture. The nominees for Best Picture are All Quiet on the Western Front, Avatar: The Way of Water, The Banshees of Inisherin, Elvis, Everything Everywhere All at Once, The Fabelmans, Tar, Top Gun Maverick, Triangle of Sadness, and Women Talking. A couple notable snubs. The Whale did not make it. Neither did Nope. Neither did Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. What was the one that I was like actually very surprised? Oh, The Batman. People were surprised that The Batman didn't get a nom. I wasn't that surprised, but those were all ones that could have easily made this list and didn't. Oh, Babylon. Oh, that was the one I was thinking of, not The Batman. Babylon did not get a nomination. Again, didn't completely surprise me, but was a little sad to hear that it didn't get the nomination. What's in the front running? You've heard it the whole time. I would say my top 4 are Everything Everywhere, Banshees. I would say at this point, based on all the chatter I've been hearing, All Quiet on the Western Front is definitely a front runner because the Academy seemed to absolutely adore that movie. And for a while, people were saying, The Fabelmans won a Golden Globe, so it's up there. It's definitely towards the top. I don't think it's gonna win that though. Again, I think it's a tight 2-way race between Banshees and Everything Everywhere. If anything else wins that isn't those 4 that I already mentioned, I think it's a little bit ridiculous, because I think that one of those 4 deserves the win 100%, and everything else, if you give it to Avatar, I mean, ugh, like, sorry, it's just, it might be a good movie, but it's for Best Picture over the incredible things that we witnessed from Banshees and the Fabelmans, and I mean, just all that. I gotta see Everything Everywhere, so because that's a huge one. And All Quiet on the Western Front has a lot of love, and I'm aware of the original story, because again, I've seen the older one, and it is a fantastically tragic but beautiful story of World War II, I believe. So it's just the content that we got there. I just really don't see anything other than those 4 winning. But yeah, I'm super excited to see how all of this pans out in March. When we get a little closer, I do plan on actually making official predictions for winners in each category, and I want to see how many I can get correct. Maybe we'll throw out some wagers or something, add a little spice. But let me know down below what you think the biggest winners and losers were for these noms. This was a super stacked year for movies, but don't you worry. I've been keeping an eye on this year as well, so we'll get to that in due time. I want to thank everyone for listening to the Cinema Spotlight. If you enjoyed, please leave a like on the video and give the show a rating on Spotify. And if you could take a moment to subscribe to the show, I would really appreciate it. Follow me on Instagram at SenaJames35 for updates on when new episodes get released. If you want to let me know what movies to check out, head over to YouTube and drop a comment or 2. That's all I got. Stay classy, friends.